wield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. It's about observing cycles, sharing insights, and solving problems together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Right along here with Ransom Godwin, taking it through the next 2 hours on Revolution Radio. For those of you joining us, please remember we're streaming on 8 different platforms, from the Facebook to the Twitter to the, what do we got, Vigilante TV shout out. We got over our YouTube, and then we got the Rumble channel up and running as well. Clanking worker citizen drones. Have you seen? It seems like the messaging is incredibly clear over the last week, even since we had our last show, that everything is now meant to be controlled, monitored, metered, and you have nothing for free any longer. Even if it was just a nature thing from God that used to be considered usable for the entire society, and now it's going to be regulated, monitored. You won't be able to have access to it unless you jump through all these hoops. And it just seems the messaging super clear on this now. So, you know, how are you going to embrace the new reality? Because these things are coming at us whether you want it to or not. Because earlier on my video that I just uploaded into YouTube, they're going, and I've already done the first gold-based transaction between United Arab Emirates and the Reserve Bank of India. So the central bank over in the UAE, which was always a bastion and a stronghold for dollar usage for oil sales, was using something. This will be a brand new one for you. So everybody, please look for LCS, which stands for Local Currency Settlement. Get this. They didn't use rupees or anything, dinars from UAE. They used 25 kilograms of gold, which is a little over 50 pounds of gold, as the swap mechanism to transfer the value from their fiat currencies. Between the fiat currencies, they use gold as the medium that everybody agreed on. That's the cornerstone bedrock of it. It's worth that much, and we'll trade each of our currencies back and forth to get that gold in the middle. It's just going to take a few more of these. It's already begun, and then all these things happening coming up the 22nd. So we won't even have our show until after this occurs. The BRICS nations are meeting on the 22nd. All of the planned invitees, those that will be members, formally announced, and also, I don't know, they could say anything they want and it would shake the world because, there's people already using gold out here. Yeah, if this was the year 2000 and these in India and UAE were using gold to go around the dollar for oil sales, man, the U.S. military would have been in there like a fifth of an eighth of a second on the UAE. And some sort of sanctions would have been slapped on India for sure, because it hadn't been the powerhouse yet of the economy like we see with China and India now. That would have been another war would have started because of this usage of gold outside the dollar. So anyway, a huge amount of things are in change right now. It is an incredible week to be alive. This is going to be a big one economically as we move through. And before the show, Ransom and I were talking about AI and diving into it to really see what the possibilities were on that. So, Ransom, I'm glad you're here with me, and everybody else out there. Thank you for spending your valuable time right here, Revolution Radio, Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight.
How's it hanging on Thursday? Yeah, the AI is it's out there, and well, it's going to be taking over everything because you can't trust human beings to do things anymore, like report the news or write stories or, tell you information. And the more that I've dived into it, it's a plethora of tools that could revolutionize everything, really. The problem is that the same old, program of controlling narratives and information is deeply embedded in all of the companies because they don't want backlash. So they're preemptively setting up most of these AIs with, I'm going to say, heavy restrictions on what you can or can't generate with it. However, there's so many tricks around it that I don't think that they're going to be able to control it the way they think. I think an avalanche of people figuring out things, combining programs, writing their own new programs, and then not to mention there's a whole group of people out there that don't want to be censored. They don't want their creativity limited. They don't want their information transfer limited. I'll say it that way. But the kind of news really is that the big corporations are going all in on the AI while they stop the little guy from doing certain things with it. They are going to do that. And this includes deep fake. This includes fake voices. Right. Earlier, I was showing David a program and we were looking at it, and you could take a sample of anyone's voice anywhere and then create an AI text to video based thing where you can make someone say anything and sound like anyone. And I guess that's why they're so heavily in the restrictions, because we are going to be entering a time where from news to entertainment, you can't believe what you see, hear, or read. Here's one article right here. News Corporation profits plunge 75%, but they're not worried about it because media giants hail the opportunity of AI. And what do they mean by that? Well, they mean replacing all the human commentators, reporters, and et cetera, writers, editors, all of it with AI. And, people think that some of their, the industries that they're in aren't going to be affected. But let me tell you, are you a farmer? Say you're a guy that goes to clean up lots and pick weeds out of the farm there and help the farmer out by pulling out stuff and manually doing it, and you get paid by the hour. It's all right money. Well, don't worry about it. They can just buy a new machine that will just drive up and down, and it'll laser out all of the weeds, kill the insects. And when you see this continuing, what you're seeing is the removal of human beings out of all of the equations, from labor to manufacturing, to creativity, information and news, media, entertainment, even the production of food is being handed over to AI in different ways. Some of those ways we can't talk about on here, but the point being that every industry is involved in the AI, and what they're giving, it's weird. It's because it's like the same old story. It's like cell phones are great, computers are great, tablets are great, satellites are great, all of the stuff's great. But when it's being controlled on how you use it, it amounts to not much more than a paperweight in the long run. And it seems like every invention that is out there that could benefit man is co-opted, controlled, and made to a point where it's really unusable for the common guy. But the corporations are bombarding you with the same thing. So it would behoove to everyone, not only to learn AI, but to recognize AI and, use it yourself. Use it for the opposite reasons. Like, you could make something very fast that could teach, like you could say you have a book and you like to make an audio book, things like that, real easy. So you just load your book in there. But at the same time, you could give people images and ideas and all of these things and teach them how to do things, inform them about things. But I think it'll be going the way of YouTube in the sense that only certain topics and so certain genres are going to be able to be used. Like right now, let's see, here's this one, KOAT. This is one of my local news stations here. YouTube to promote false claims. Oh, excuse me, not promote them. Freudian slip. Prohibit false claims about cancer treatments under its medical misinformation policy. So this means that, going out from the here now to the future, it's on you, the individual, to learn all you can about every topic, especially those that directly or indirectly change or steer your life in some way, because you can't trust them. And it's so funny that we live in an era. You remember when they came out with that stuff on TV there for a while that was kind of telling people, and they do it over and over again. I remember when the Snowden leaks leaked. The news media was trying to say, well, we're allowed to have these documents and read them and go over to them and explain them to you, but you can't look at them. Even though, it's freedom of press and every single individual is that press that they're talking about in the amendment to have the freedom of press. However, they said you need to see it through our lens. And, that's one level that they were in. But now we're getting to where they're saying, you know what? Only crazy people do their own research. People out there doing their own research, that's very dangerous, because you could be, reading something that we didn't approve, basically is what it amounts to. And now with the power of creating stuff, there's not going to be, I'm for AI, but at the same time, I can see how it's a destructive force in the way that, can you imagine turning on TV or internet media, however you look at your media, and not being able to find one single human being with an opinion of their own that's not reading off a teleprompter, or it's not generated. We're getting to that point. But if you're wanting to do dumb stuff, you can TikTok all day with the most brainless activities possible. And I watched a movie that was on Netflix last night. It was a French movie. It was pretty strange, but they kind of demonstrated where this scenario is going in the future. I think it was about 2045 in their time, and all of the robots and AIs had everything. They did everything for everyone. And at some point, robots basically took over, and they were using, they wanted a world where humans were nothing more than pets. And everything cost you credits. Every mistake that you made, possibly, they would just bill you these coins, these digital coins that were the world's, finance that everybody used. And they would just fine you for having books, fine you for having ideas, fine you for this, fine you for that. Everything that you did as a free human in the future was a penalty under the law. And they were demonstrating in a satirical way, but it was also quite frightening, showing a complete, AI-run society where everything from the commercials that sell them stuff to the interactions with companies was all AI, all of it. And the AI was programming itself. So it was getting to a point where it no longer even understood human beings other than to charge them for whatever violation they were making, whether it be social or anything else. It's a really bizarre movie. But I see that being a real scenario now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Ransom, after you and I were looking at some AI, image generators and text overlays and voice, these different layers of it. Just from my assessment, like you said, the computer, the mobile phone. I mean, take a look at today's world and go back to the 1990s when the computer was sort of coming and it was there sort of, and maybe you took a class in high school. This is how old I am. You took a class in high school to learn how to use the computer because it was all brand new and it was just coming in. So they had to introduce people to it, like what it was. Now think about that level of it. It's kind of where we're at now again. And you fast forward to today. If you don't know how to use the internet and you don't know how to make a PowerPoint, how to use a computer and thing, you have zero skill. You literally can't get hired. Like email was a new thing back then, right? So you had to learn it because now you look at email and what a joke, like you couldn't use or didn't know how to use email, really? Shit, it was all brand new. It had just started. Nobody even knew what the term really meant. So, and you take that kind of time frame and then you look at it today and you would say, man, you just literally cannot exist in any way, shape, or form without understanding how this whole system of computer stuff works at the very base level. And you can't get, think about your life today without the mobile phone, without the smartphone in your hand. I know a lot of people go with what they call it a dumb phone, the one you can just type numbers into because they can't track anything. Or they can't listen to anything. It's too old. Like old school tech beats the new hyper surveillance. But anyway, 95% of the rest of the people have smartphones. So can you imagine not knowing a smartphone, not having the ability to even understand to turn on that you could actually call somebody using that same device or get on the internet and look at something? Like if you don't know that basic skill of even how to operate the most minimal function of a smartphone, this is where we're at with AI. If you don't have that ability to even operate the smidgenest function of like the smallest levels of it, you're never going to survive. Like this thing is so vast and so gargantuan and all encompassing. You have no idea after seeing the power of this stuff. And when I say power, I'm truly talking about power in the hands of creation, because I want to now keep it as such. I'm not talking about, in a godlike sense, creating a thing, but you are creating a person with the voices and the actions which drive emotions from somebody else. So Ransom, could I tell you a Dark Mirrors episode that I just saw, because you were also mentioning, I forgot, what was the name of the show you just mentioned to me just a second ago that you watched the episode?
It was actually a movie. It was called Bug Bot or something like that. Here, let me find out what it is for sure. It was something like that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's one of the newer movies on there, but that's basically what the movie's about, is total AI and robotic control of everything from the top down. I'll find out what it is. I have to look
what was the
up.
name? And I'll tell you about the Dark Mirrors episode, because you were talking media, and I saw this Dark Mirrors episode, and I hadn't seen him in a long time since last time I saw a Dark Mirrors episode was with the pig, with the super high commissioner in England with the pig, and everybody was watching the show, and then the prince and the girl walked out on the bridge by herself at the end there. And I'd seen like a couple episodes in between, and I kind of can't even remember them. But this one really stuck with me. This thing is absolutely the reason I even got into AI to look at it, because what they would do is, when you sign those terms of service for any social media company, that allows them to use your, to harvest data off of your site, and like any type of media device you have to assign terms of service. So your smartphone is going to be different than your YouTube account, which will be different from your whatever account. Anywhere in between, from the Twitter to the whatever, to the Rumble account. Now, some things are more open in terms of transparency of the type of data they can collect from you. So when you get into the Google and you give them permission, they can get. So the whole thing was about a conglomeration of all these social media companies and tech companies and data companies came together with all the terms of service that you've ever signed to use any device in your life. And the thing, if you do that, it's like 400, 500 pages deep on the contract, because it was weird. They put the whole contract in papers, printed out on the table in front of the people when they started complaining how their images were being used. And they're like, on page 376, it's ironclad. You agreed to all this, 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 and this. But how they were doing it was, they went through all the social media accounts and they had facial recognition, match people that looked almost identical to each other, like 5 up or 5 down from yourself. It's not exactly you, but it's somebody who looks like you. Now they have the social profiles of all those people. So what they would do is then send a news feed or a tweet or some kind of, I forget what it was called in the show, push in the social media of you looking like somebody else.
This is the FBI. You are subject to prosecution under the misinformation clause of the American Homeland Security Act. David DuByne, Ransom Godwin, you have been identified.
Connection ever that was associated with these people, their images and likenesses were pushed in there. It wasn't exactly the same person, but as people were scrolling through the social media, they saw and they go, oh, it looks like Beth, it looks like Tina, it looks like David, it looks like Ransom, it looks like somebody that I knew, and that inevitably would stop on it. And then whatever would happen with each person's interaction on how they saw that media, they would call the person, oh, I can't believe you did that, or it allowed also the recording of your device and the turning on of TVs in your houses for smart devices, that you give it also permission. So the whole thing was about, she was sitting there cheating on her boyfriend, but they were sitting on the sofa having a conversation, and the TV, which you gave permission to with your smart device, had allowed to completely collect that voice recording and all, there's cameras coming out of your TVs looking at you. So they were allowed to collect all of that and then start pushing it through the feeds and just creating the most social chaos incredibly possible, ruining everybody's life on the way down as much as it could, because it wasn't the actual person. It was somebody who looked like them that got them to click. And this is the whole thing. And then once you started clicking on that and you're like, then they brought them to court, and these huge giant, 500-page contracts came out. But it was so trippy the way that their entire business model was to find you or find me, and five people that look exactly like me going up and down the scale, and then get all their connections across all of the social media and start pushing stuff. Not me in the middle, but all those 5 above and all those 5 below that are similar, faces up and down, and seeing the response they would get on people that would click. And it was just ridiculous, man. And it really freaked me out. And then all this AI stuff here, you're going to have to understand the monster here. I mean, it's a creative thing. That's why I said you have the power of creation in your hands with this thing. It is so vast and so powerful. This technology, I look at
you people in the audience are not safe. The AI will have you. You are in the matrix now.
It's a genie out of a bottle that escaped. That's all I'm going to say. And now you're going to have to ask the genie. You're going to have to prompt the genie. Genie, could I? And that's where we sit. Ransom?
Yeah, I'm here. It was funny when you were playing, I clicked the button and the AI was saying stuff. It scared everybody right when you were talking about that. They're in the Matrix now.
Only on Rumble.
I was wondering though, how long until, because have you seen some of the pranksters? Like there's a guy that pranked Kissinger and thinking he was Zelensky. Like there's been several of these guys, but now that we have these tools, can you imagine a scenario where you have two people, let's say like Joe Biden or Kissinger, that are later in the years, and although they talk about AI a lot, I don't really think they understand it like younger people do. They don't understand the power of it. That's why they fall for some of these pranks. But you can imagine two fake presidents on a phone call together, talking to each other about nuclear war. And you know, it really puts a different perspective on your lens of absorbing information. Because like, check this out, just on the headlines today. And you can imagine, and we don't even know if AI wrote this article. It says it's by Brendan Cole, but is that a real person? I don't know. I'm not saying it is or isn't. But construction of Europe's largest doomsday stockpile quietly gets underway. Here's another one. World War III warning as Putin's bold Black Sea escalation could lead to NATO clash. Inside the Russians' effort to build 6,000 attack drones with Iran's help. And it just goes on and on. They want you to be terrified out of your gourd about this potential World War III. But at the same time, are we? Who is they? So for a minute, I kind of wanted to talk about pronouns, because it's so ironic that all of my life I've heard people talk about, you know, who does what, who's behind things, who's pulling the strings, and we've always used the pronouns they and them, right? So they and them had a meaning beyond just the pronouns themselves for a really, really long time. So, you know, you would say, well, they just did it for the money. Well, they killed Kennedy because they didn't like this. And, you know, you'd always have that classic person go, who's they? Who is they? Well, the truth is we don't know who they or
central banking.
Yeah, well, but who are they? I mean, can you name the owners of the private bank? I mean, you might be able to, you know, name off some people on the board that they put in the public, or, you know, like somebody like that. But who are them? Who are they? And now it's ironic that they've taken those same things where pronouns don't mean anything now. So it's who did it? They, them did it. They, them did it. And they, them could be an AI at this point. So when you're reading articles about doomsday, are we to trust that? Or did somebody just put in prompts? What's a really scary story to, you know, make people afraid? Like you could literally go to Chat GPT and say, what would be a scary story about a nuclear holocaust amongst nations of the earth? And then it would tell you a story, and it would tell you, well, this is just speculation. Like the other day, I put into Chat GPT, I said, if Star Wars were a real thing in reality, who would the empire be? Which nation would it be? And then it goes through and it says, well, you know what? By the way, there's a lot of nations that fit that bill. Great Britain, Nazi Germany, Great Rome, the United States, and China. Can you believe that? So they even named you know, current superpowers as that. So even the AI, you know, when you ask it a question like that, it pretty much knows the truth. So if I ask the AI, could you give me a story that's realistic about today's events that would increase tensions amongst the peasant class, so to speak? So if you ran one of these AI, if you ran an AI, you could turn off the censorship and the bias, and the AI would just give you a straight answer based on all of the available information that it could absorb from the internet. And it might actually give you a nice script, not unlike some of these headlines we're reading today. That's how fake basically the world is. Moscow court arrests Americans for espionage. But, you know, is that a real story? I don't know. We're at that point that I can't just look through the articles and know that a human wrote it, a human researched it, a human verified it, and then a human put their name on the line and their you know, their real identity to give us this information. This is going to be a strange new world. Now, believe it or not, this links into the Trump trial that's going on right now. If you've looked at the charges, they are charging him and several other people with doing things like questioning things, making Facebook posts, Twitter posts that have their opinion on it, reciting articles that are in the news. These are the things that they're listing out as crimes. So can you imagine the world that you're in right now, where the government can literally start charging you with crimes for not agreeing with their narrative? And I don't mean like pushing out false information or anything like that, just mentioning factual things that have been proven. They can charge you with crimes now. And, you know, later in the show, maybe the last 30 minutes, I kind of wanted to get into what's going on in Hawaii and how that affects the rest of the world. You know, because I don't know which parts of that, because I can tell you right now that the Hawaii situation is going to be one of the most heavily censored and controlled stories going forward, and you can already see that.
Ransom. If we're going to talk about this, we're going to have to ditch the YouTube and head over to Rumble.
Yeah, I agree, but I thought we'd wait till like maybe the last 30 minutes to do that, and you know, because I've been doing a lot of research into that, and it gets cuckoo. But let's just talk about some stuff in the real world that might relate, if you can understand.
Ransom, can you hold that thought? Can I throw a thought to you? And then I know you're going to ping right off of it in like 2 seconds. So using ChatGPT myself, because I have the August opportunity report that I am in the midst of completing right now. So I use ChatGPT. Now this is really super important. I was trying to verify or validate that because of the Hungatonga eruption, there was a huge amount of ice crystal clouds up in the mesosphere. Like it was the big, huge water vapor eruption, and it pushed it one layer up from the stratosphere, like way super high up. Generally, meteorites coming in leave a little dust up there that'll make a cloud, or rocket launch, like going out. We'll leave some, you know, some particulate, water, whatever else gases up there. That will make a cloud. Now, generally, they're really wispy and they're called noctilucent clouds. But literally up there right now, there's hundreds of thousands, okay, I'll be conservative, tens of thousands of times more crystals of ice crystal surface for ozone to break down on. So this year was forecast to have the biggest ozone hole ever recorded since, you know, we started really looking at it like 1987 or something like this. So far, the year 2000 is the lowest, but this is going to be way bigger, like super crazy, way big. And it's going to affect the barley crops. This was my forecast back in December and January, 6 months ago. So this is going to verify or validate that. So this is what I was thinking. You're trying to get you to think for me, Ransom. So I'm asking a question like, I want to use this point to validate that it's possible that crops could be lost due to UVB radiation striking the ground, based on how sensitive the penguins' eyes are to UVB radiation, to explain all of the beach strandings we've had so far with the penguins. There's thousands and thousands of penguins like washing up on the South American beaches. One thing they all have in common: empty stomachs. So I put in a ChatGPT, I said, how sensitive are penguins' eyes to UVB radiation? And then it answered back, penguins' eyes are highly sensitive to UVB. They have a wider range of electromagnetic spectrum. So if that were to increase, then the higher that is, the blinder they get. And also their prey is also sensitive too with the retinas. So they're going to move to different locations or different depths in the water. So everything's affected. So if the penguins are starving to death and washing up because their prey moved or they couldn't hunt because of the sensitivity in the eyes, would this not be another kind of, you know, check the box? All right, we're looking for really huge grain production losses in the Southern Hemisphere, which again would drive price. And it's just going to be a never-ending price increase, which was how I was trying to Ransom dovetail into your thought there.
I could totally see that happening. I think it's actually going to be a little worse than that, because I can see now that they have an idea to move everybody in the same spot everywhere. So you keep hearing these terms like 15-minute cities. And I remember when the term first came out, we were talking about, although it's 15 minutes to go here, it's 15 minutes to go there, it sounds really convenient, that you would actually be closed off and kind of locked into an area. And so here's an example. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and this doesn't have anything to do with the topic we're talking about, but it is interesting. So they're talking about how there's so many vacant lots in neighborhoods and, how it's a real estate nightmare, but it's also a real estate opportunity. So this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But if you look right here, you see all these houses, and they have this one square outline, and inside that square is a bunch of trees and stuff. So that in itself is nice if you live there. This is something that we would want more of, not less of. But when you pan out, they show you a bunch of red squares, right? And then when you pan out again, you see thousands of red squares. Now, inside each one of these red squares are utility wires that go to that empty lot. So power lines are ready to connect in case someone buys the lot and moves into there. So there's one of these connections at each one of these little squares that you see. But also, no one is trimming them. No one is maintaining it. No one's doing anything with it. And so say you had something like, this is all hypothetical here, say you had something like Tropical Storm Hillary, and it's forecast to hit LA on Sunday with winds up to 80 miles per hour. California's first potential cyclone landfall since 1939. Now, if in California there are large areas of these unattended lots in the city with power lines running through them, and the city maybe might have chose not to concentrate its efforts on lots that don't have anything on it and trimming around that because, no one's complaining about it, and they can do massive lots like commercial lots and like stuff like that. But that's all around where people live. So if an 80-mile-an-hour wind gust started blowing into the city of Los Angeles and knocked over maybe some trees or something, and they hit the power lines, and then the power lines arced out. And, if the city planners didn't have the wherewithal or the foresight to turn off the electricity and leave the water on, there may be the potential for a massive fire blowing through Los Angeles, San Diego, pick a city. And then imagine a smart city that's blocked off where you can't escape anywhere, where you can't go anywhere. And now you have this fire. And guess what? Most people don't pack gas masks in their go bag in case of forest fires. I happen to be one of those people. I carry that around just in case. Probably never going to use it. But if I got caught in a forest fire with no oxygen or a lot of smoke that was blowing. Now, this is very similar to what just happened in Hawaii. So I'm not saying anything about Hawaii, but I'm just saying in LA, if the city so happened to not trim up and take care of these fire hazards that are everywhere in these empty lots, well, you can just imagine 80 mile an hour blowing through this red square that I'm showing with all of those lots not maintained, not cut, not ready for a fire. And then say the city, for some reason, turned off the water before the fire, but left the electricity on so that the trees might fall on the power lines, causing fires and arcing. And then you might see like a big cloud of smoke over the city of Los Angeles with a lot of what look like lightning flashes, but are actually transformers and power lines falling against each other, coupled with 80-mile-an-hour wind. You could see that a nightmare is in the making if that's the way LA is treating their city. If. Now, I'm not saying they are. However, if you look at certain cities and who runs them, they all have certain programs going, and those programs might make it more likely for tender matchbox, conditions that don't mix well with 80-mile-an-hour winds and electricity. So, and the last hour, we can talk about things that actually happened in real life, but we can't talk about on YouTube. But that was just a fictional scenario about this upcoming Hurricane Hillary. And it says right here on AccuWeather, it expects dangerous flooding from California to Arizona. But the part that caught my eye, really, was this 80-mile-an-hour wind in an area that, in the last couple of years, for some reason, has had a lot of forest fires. Now, if you got a chance to look at last week's show notes, I brought up the Fuyu bombs or the Fu bombs from Japan. And it's a really interesting story that has nothing to do with current events, not the Chinese balloons, not the forest fires, nothing. However, they made about 9,000 of these things, and they sent about what the U.S. government thinks to be about 900 of them. They recovered 100 or 200, I forget, but which leaves about 400 of these bombs that are fire bombs, which are improvised explosives that have a big charge in them. I forgot what the exact thing is, but it'll blow up pretty big. And it also has 3 feet of hydrogen-laced paper. And these things are just sitting around in Canada and the United States, just sitting there in the forest, wherever they landed to this day. And I'm not making a connection, but if you so happen to know where those things were, they could be set off. And if there was any winds, it would be a horrible nightmare. It might cause, wildfires across North America and, like places like Canada and the United States. But also, if you remember the forest fires a while back, there was these hot spots on the maps, and they just, were near power stations. I'm not saying there's a connection. I'm just saying the forests seem to burn really hot around those areas. So hopefully, there won't be these kind of conditions in California.
Well, I would say northern territories or northern Maritimes just all sparked up exactly like it did about a month ago that sent all the smoke, orange smoke, whatever kinds of smoke over to New York City. Remember that big one? It was between the gigantic release in Ohio of the chemicals, and then there was those massive forest fires that made news for probably a good better part of a week. It was so much smoke in New York City. Remember how all those fires all started at the same time? Literally, when you look at on the map, Dutch Sense did a good job of covering that. When you could see all the ignitions come within literally just 1 hour of each other. It was kind of like, nah, shit, right? That's not lightning strikes. And if you take a look at Newfoundland or up there, if you like Northern Maritimes, you're gonna see all these bunch of fires started up there again near I forget what the name of it was, up in the Forks up there. Again, there's so many of them, it's hard to keep up, but you can see how one continuous thing keeps happening, these fires. And now if you go to Tenerife, which is off of Africa, huge fires there too, like racing over the mountains. It's a huge tourist area. So I mean, there's a lot of correlations with it. If you go to Tenerife, people surf there. It's like a holiday spot. You can bring the boats there. It's not too far from Europe, but it's the furthest point, where you get to like a tropical Europe, quote unquote. We're not talking about the Antilles and over there in the Caribbean. That's what they claim, but this is still what they hold. So that's part of the whole thing. But here's the thing, I keep coming back to AI again, and I was trying to say it in the wrong way, but if you looked at AI, it could tell you exactly where, with that kind of wind pattern, with that kind of topography, with this kind of moisture in the soil, and using GIS software to determine, what the vegetation was, what the average, tree species density is in there, all these type of things. And then it also could measure the moisture at the same time, so it would know exactly where you would need to light that to get it to spread the way you want in the exact direction it want. And if it would only cover, 30 degrees out of the 360 which you're aiming at, then you would have to have multiple spark points to get it to cover the 75 degrees of arc that were meant to be torched through. like you're all doing this in real time, and I really think there would be AI involved in this. These mathematical equations, that's a doable thing with today, and that's what I'm saying, how scary it is, and like how all powerful this thing is. In real time, looking at multiple satellite sets, it could tell you within, probably 6 square feet or 10 square feet, the average density of moisture in a particular area, in a particular tree species. That's crazy, but that's like old tech. That's years ago. So I can't even imagine what it would be like today and what they can really look at. And if you got the wind patterns and then you have the topographical maps, they already understand wind flow, because like a huge amount was mapped during, get this, when they were doing surveys for wind turbines. Like almost all the Earth's been mapped for wind flow, which it never was before. Now they have wind flow, which was, it's all been mapped. Anywhere there's possibly a wisp of wind that could have pushed a turbine, it's been mapped. So now you start to integrate all these different sciences. And then all it takes is, the program with the correct wordage and how to get this to cover from, if you're looking at north at 0, it's going to go, okay, from 0 to 45, everything in that whole thing needs to disappear. So where does it need to be lit? Because when I looked at some of these photos up in the cane fields, it looked like there was 3 or 4 ignition spots. When you get those real wide views, you got to look, don't look downtown. What you're really looking for is the real wide views looking back out of into the cane fields, way back up there. Like, look, you look way back in the back of the image up there, and you'll see what I mean. Like sometimes there would be a helicopter view from way back over there, like when the fires were coming in. And the people that were, excuse me, taking photos themselves, I just swallowed an insect. But that is...
I told you, David, you will eat the bugs. You will enjoy the bugs.
Yes, Klaus, may I shine your shoes? May I lick your boots? Ransom.
Damn, that must have been a June bug. That one was hard to swallow, huh? It's crunchy.
Yeah.
No, speaking of food, though, we talk a lot about food here, and I was looking at this article, and you might think that these people are crazy. However, they're a Stone Age tribe, and they still practice cannibalism. So, cannibal tribe that eats
that's
thieves.
A bad word here.
It eats thieves as punishment, devouring everything apart from, well, they can read that. I'm not going to read it, but the male member part. So, we talk a lot about what would happen after the lights go out. And I know a lot of people are kind of judgy about how civilization is so forward. And we were talking about AI and all that stuff. But in the reverse, when the grid goes down, I have a feeling that people may act a little more like this. And, like, what do you eat when there's nothing to eat? Well, obviously, and not to get gloom here, but some people at certain times with certain beliefs have decided to eat people. And, I was just thinking, we get into those scenarios about, the grid's down. You got these groups of people out there driving around in groups looking for resources. But what would happen if, we just, I don't know, ate the thieves? Is that too far-fetched? I mean, that is a Stone Age tribe's mentality and belief system, and who am I to judge them? But maybe we could culturally appropriate. No, I'm being silly, but this is all going to link into the Hawaii thing at the end, because basically that I believe Hawaii, the Maui thing, was a vision of the future for the rest of the smart cities in the Western world. And these fires can be started from anything. They can be started from lightning. They can be started from smokers. They can be started from protesters. Now, just think about that. And if you remember a few years ago, there was a certain group of people that said, if they didn't get their people in where they wanted them to, that cities would burn. And, well, cities burned that following summer.
Yeah. Like I was saying, that the big C word here, I can't do it. I do it, because you ask, what would you do? Well, I would first know at least wild foraging, some basic stuff, just to get some plant nutrient into you. I would understand where minerals are in like muds and stuff. And I'd probably actually eat some mud if it was in a fresh flowing water area that had, something there. And then sit down and actually just really not beyond praying. I mean, praying's, but to get into the whole thing, it's like, I'm not going to partake in that at all. Like, I'm going to choose to sit here and end whatever that existence is before I step to that. I will not participate at all. So in that kind of mind frame of melding with the Creator to allow some other source of sustenance to actually come to you, using mind over matter to create something out of nothing, because you wouldn't go there. So perhaps the universe responds and reciprocates, because maybe that's a part of the test. I don't know. But it gets to, even if you look at biblical stories of a loaf of bread or one fish and then multiples coming out of things, is that, excuse me, like David Blaine pulling something out of a basket? I mean, these powers are out there. All humans had these powers before. Like, how powerful a human is just so astounding, but it's been pushed down, written out, squashed down. I mean, the human, as we understand, even the ones that can manifest, like the billionaire manifester kind, that's so like 1/10 of 1%. Like, what if that was humanity's normal state of being able to create? Like, you look at these ultra achievers, and there's some great, people that get you motivated to get up every day and have a purpose in life and really go for that is the reason you want to be alive, because it gives you so much joy and happiness following that dream. It ain't work. It's a dream, and you're on there the whole way. The same thing, like those ultra motivators, the way things they can produce with their minds is pretty astounding, how it goes from thought into action, into a physical thing that comes out on the other end. Now take it to the billionaire class. And that is what our waking normal vibrational state is before you even put it into first gear. But somehow that has been knocked out of us completely over the last thousands of years, or 1,000 years, or even when you were a kid, and I'm a kid too, and you're in school and they tell you this, that, and the other. Or they train you for 18 years in schools on how to behave or think. They think you out of just the normal way of creation, or you being a creator is a better word for it. But anyway, I lost my train of thought there, Ransom. Can you bring us out to the hour here? What do you think? Throw some idea at me. I know you got something to go there.
Sorry, I remuted myself. No, I sit here and analyze this stuff like I'm my own AI. So, I got my own artificial intelligence. It's programmed by the parameter police and the controllers. So, when I start hearing everybody talking about possibilities of nuclear war and massive areas where people can't live anymore, or, smart cities that just burn to the ground overnight, even though they were supposed to be the safe, secure future of, paradise. Here's another paradise that scientists believe in. Now, I don't know, but it kind of sounds like they're saying this is a good thing. And also, when you listen to these people talk, like Bill Gates and all these people, they talk about their idea of their wonderful utopia of a planet reduced by a lot of people so that there are these big spaces for nature to live in. And, proliferate. And we know what the Georgia Guidestones said. So when I read an article like this, the Chernobyl disaster may have also built a paradise. Some scientists think radioactive human-free landscape might be now a haven for plants and animals. Isn't that great? So, if they, detonate a couple of low-yield weapons across Europe or maybe the United States, China, we can just have these vast paradises where humans don't live. But don't worry, because plants and animals with their shorter lifespan can just live in a haven paradise. When you know that scientists think this way, you kind of have an idea of, if they were allowed to choose whether or not humans lived in a certain area or not, they might not choose to have them there. Maybe areas that were, famously occupied by Pleistocene animals that they, at the same time just so happened to be thinking about cloning and repopulating. I don't know. Sounds kind of weird to me, but we're moving into a phase where a lot of ideas are coming into reality. And not only that, the elite's ability to see them through fruition is coming to pass. And I see a lot of their programs rearing their ugly head. And maybe I'm woo-woo, but I see the possibilities of where they can make nightmares for human beings.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that the entire world has just shifted with this technology coming out, as much as, I'm going to even say far greater than the full movement from what we knew as typewriters into full computers and the smartphone sitting in front of you. Like, that movement of everything just happened, but it happened so fast that nobody's really even able to understand the tech yet, because you were able to take that 10 years to get the computer because it was slowly rolling out from scratch. This thing is fully developed and already so powerful and just unbelievably, I don't know, the intertwining of possibilities of this thing in itself is infinite. Like, if you wanted to create something, it's truly infinite, the possibilities of intercreation and interconnection between all of these things from your mind into it to create something out of. It's quite remarkable. I just can't even say it. There's not really enough words in the English language to explain what I'm trying to say. I mean, the amount of change that occurred from the computer is just like a fraction of a second that just occurred, but it's going to have a 10 times greater impact than that. The horse and buggy to the high-speed rail, magnetic maglev, that's the same trend. That's the same equivalent of change from the computer now.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
The currency, well, it will be the exact same thing. Now, do you have enough money to buy an ounce of silver? Perhaps you do. It's the same thing with food preps. The 1 week kit compared to something like a full 6 weeks kit or a 12-week kit. Even if you get just one small minimal thing to add to your stack. I talk to people who prep all the time. It's always about tools, storable foods, water filtration, and a way for you able to store water and filter it at the same time. Because if you can get that closed loop enough, there's always going to be somebody that will help you garden with those seeds. Heirloom seeds is where you want to go. Heirloom open pollinator seeds. Because at the end of the day, when you collect those seeds at the end of your season for growing, you want to be able to store those and then have them so you can replant next year. I think that supply chains are going to start constricting even further. I mean, look at the way that the world laid out. These really incredibly complex supply chains are now starting to fracture in the middle of everywhere. Political strife. We didn't even talk about the ozone depletion event that's going to wipe out food production further in the Southern Hemisphere. The tipping point. Humanity's here. We're seeing it everywhere. So how do you protect your friends and family? Because you got to think, everybody has survived. We would not be here having this conversation if people had not survived the last 8,000 or 10,000 years of events that were far greater than what we're going to experience. It just takes a little prepping, a little bit readiness, and I do believe that we'll be able to get through this.
When we're talking about these seeds and the storable foods to go with it, you're going to have to probably invest in both of these ideas. when you go through the list of the seeds that they give you, these heirloom seeds, they're the best type of food that you could possibly get or grow yourself. But you have this backup of the food storage that lasts 25 years.
And that's heavensharvest.com. Use the code ADAPT at checkout. That's ADAPT. Take 15% off your order.
Whatever comes your way, weather, war, whatever it is, you're prepared, you have security. At least you know that your belly's going to be full so that you can continue on the work that needs to be done to stabilize everyone's life around you.
But 2008 is when the system actually died and was put on QE life support till they could get into place the next system that will take the current system's place. And you know, what I'm talking about is, like, back in 71, we went from a quasi-gold standard in August, in the beginning of August of 1971, to a pure debt-based standard by the end of August and going into September. People didn't realize that anything had changed, when in reality, everything had changed. And we're at that same juncture right now where everything has changed.
Absolutely. And to that point, Zoltan Kolodner of Credit Suisse actually has a paper out saying that the crisis that we saw in 1971, it's not even going to be anywhere near that. It's going to be way worse what we're experiencing today. But my question is, I was just observing, when I was outside the head office of UBS and I was looking at passerbys, and I was wondering, do you think that most people are even aware of what's happening and the repercussions?
No. With rising inflation, bank failures, and massive layoffs across multiple sectors, the future of the economy remains uncertain. It's no wonder the central banks have been getting prepared by stockpiling gold. At ITM Trading, we have spent over 27 years building a team of seasoned researchers and analysts who can help you prepare for any financial crisis. Our experts are ready to provide you with proven strategies to safeguard your wealth and assets in the event of an economic downturn or currency reset, which is frankly inevitable. Don't wait until it's too late.
ITM Trading is a precious metals company that's been in business for over 27 years with the mission to educate and empower individuals to hedge against inflation, financial risk, and help you prepare for the Great Reset. Schedule your free gold and silver.
You look and see how much censorship is truly taking its course now. Like it's before it was sort of visible to people, but now everybody can truly see it. Like it's no longer hidden in a back closet somewhere, like, hey, you talk about that, you don't know what you're talking about. There's no censorship happening, but it's just so it's like right on the table in front of you. So if you consider free speech something to keep online, consider Revolution Radio a donation to keep this, not only this channel, but the entire network on air, to bring you different voices, different opinions, different ideas. Because we truly are at the point now where we really, really need a lot of communication and alternative thought between people. Because as Ransom and I were talking about earlier, with AI coming out, you can generate any message with any voice, with any person, with any thought, with anything behind it that you want to disseminate across the airwaves, and you will not be able to determine if it was a real person or not. That's the level we're going at in like weeks from now, not years from now. That's the whole thing I get out of this. The evolution of the technology is just, it's so fast. It's unbelievably fast. Like the images I saw before when I first started looking into this, not even 3 months ago. Yeah, you could tell there were things a lot of times with the hands and, something with eyes, and that's all gone. That's near perfection now. So back then, that was such a defected artifact inside a creation algorithm, recorrected itself in less than 3 months to go from, you could definitely tell that was fake, to that's very close, man. That is so close right now, it's difficult to tell. In 3 months. Like where it's going in another 3 months after this is you will not be able to tell the difference. That's how fast this technology is moving. and it's stunning. And you know, you're going to have to be able to discuss these types of issues and truly what is or isn't going on. Because I had lunch with my parents today, and there was a bunch of floods around our place. There was huge rainfalls here, and when they're still cleaning up from the rainfalls like 3 days ago, 3 days ago in the evening. But I was asking my parents, you know, and they were talking about the elections coming up. And even my mom is saying, I think they were fixed. I don't know. And she was saying, this guy's such a terrible leader of the country, like the worst ever. What's going to happen if he wins again? Then I know it's going to be fixed. And I said, well, then what do you want to do about it? What are you going to do? And she said, I don't know. I'll just know. And that was the whole answer. There's 300 million people out here, and less than 600. You know, 300 million versus 600. It boils down to that. But that was the same messaging. I don't know. I'll just know. But that was an interesting thing to say. I'll just know. But then what does that do for everybody? I think about that. Just suddenly the entire country just knows that was, it ain't what it is. Let's say it is definitely not real. Just like the AI is not real. It just definitely won't be real. And everybody will realize that at the exact same time, that it's not real anymore, that is a complete fiction. Everything you think, breathed, and were brought up on is a complete fiction because of that one event. But then, you know, all this AI driving, pushing, you wonder where those two are going to meet in the middle, and would one be the catalyst for the other. But Ransom, I know you're going to have a response because you always do. Welcome back, second hour, Many Ice Age Conversations. Welcome one, welcome all.
Yeah, you think the AI, yeah, I was going to say, you'd think the AI would make a better touch screen. The thing doesn't recognize me as being alive sometimes. No, I was trying to unmute myself. It wouldn't. The whole thing with the, you know, because we're allowed to talk about that on YouTube now. So the whole thing with the election is whether you believe that the elections turn out the way that they do or not, the idea that you give away this power to artificial counting in the first place seems, you know, suspect from the beginning. But I don't think there's any way around that into the future. These systems are set up and they're entrenched in our society so much that it really doesn't matter which guy in an empty suit there, you know, represents us at this point. I lost faith in that a long time ago when you realize that it's a uniparty. And the special interests are a giant revolving door of people that are in agencies and then in corporations, which amounts to communism or a fascist state. I know a lot of people like to call people fascist in the wrong context, but whenever you have a merger of corporation and state or government and, you know, what we call the industrial complex, that it's, you know, on one end is communism, on the other end is fascism. And with crony capitalism, that's about what we got. So, you know, like there's only one way to kind of go around them. And that's just to, like we've been talking about for weeks, is to start opting out of their systems. And how do you do that? Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know one thing, that if your future's riding on the monetary systems, you might be in for a shock because they're going to change them on everyone. And, you know, how dare anyone even believe that 81 million people didn't vote for Joe Biden in the first place? I mean, he's obviously a competent, well-spoken, trustworthy individual from way back. I mean, if you've been paying attention to him for 40 years, he's only gotten in trouble for plagiarizing and lying, I don't know how many times, but a very small number. I mean, so you could still trust him.
Yeah, the record high at 101 degrees is only 87 degrees today, but it was near the record high, only, you know, 88 degrees today, but near the record high of 101 degree, right? Similar.
The global temperatures.
81 million people voted for Joe Biden. Any claims he didn't win are subject to prosecution.
Instead of, you know, like not believing him, I think I'll just start believing everything that they say and see how that turns out. You think that would be good? I mean, like, it sounds like a good idea because government is there to protect you. So, of course, they would only do things in our best interest.
You're blocked, man. I don't even know if you're real because, the conversation I had with you in the first hour and the way you're talking now, I think something has gone over, and I'm not even talking to you, Ransom. I'm talking to a voice-generated Ransom that took over during the break. How do you respond to that? That's the world we're moving into. Like, how do you even respond to something like that?
I've seen some really interesting law suits going on right now. So when you have these, like, for example, there's a porn star that's all over the news right now because she made a viral video about complaining that if you typed in her name and you put the word nude, Google itself would bring up millions and millions of images of this woman in the predicament that you described in the search engine. And not to mention that, you could also describe that person and the attributes and put them in any number of AI programs, which can change what that person's doing and the way it looks. But what's funny is when we were kids, they had the nudie magazines at the store and they had them up on the top shelf, and it might have had 30 photographs total in it. If you type in someone's name in the Google search, you get thousands. So I kind of see the point that they're complaining about, that Google and these other monster corporations get away with using images, stories, and all of this without copyrights, without paying the owners. They do it. But if you try to turn it around and do the same thing, of course, they shut you down for copyright infringement, intellectual property theft, all kinds of stuff. So it's like a one-way system that they're using to, control every aspect. So, like, even if you came up with a great idea and you put a little character together and you put it out there, if it really got famous, it'll be co-opted, or you'll have to pay the company that created it, because in the user agreements, they retain control of the creations that you thought you were making. So everything from DNA to ideas are being copyrighted and owned. Thank God we had a while back a Supreme Court decision. I wouldn't rely on these too much more in the future, but it said that, a leaf is still part of the tree. So even if you take a leaf off of the tree, it's still part of something, and you can't copyright DNA. But there's a little a but in there. If you change it just a little bit, then you can copyright it. So imagine all of these databases full of, let's see, the point I'm kind of making is that I don't think the public sees where these programs end. You were bringing up a great point earlier about the amount of scientific information available to us at this era. So say I was worried about, we'll go back to Los Angeles. I was worried about this hurricane and the fire conditions. I could know exactly where it's going to blow in, just about the trajectory of the wind, where it's going to blow off the canyons, all of this stuff, which kind of tells you, and it's a point I brought up before, with all the surveillance that we have and all of the algorithms and people and manpower and all of this in this total surveillance grid that can find grandma protesting from a bunch of blurry photos with their facial recognition, can't seem to find the real criminals. They can't seem to find the real terrorists. They can't seem to figure out these mysteries of how fire started, and things like that. When we know that they have the computing power, the AI power, the algorithm power, and learning machines that could tell them exactly where, when, and how something started. So it also predicts it for them. They have prediction models. So they almost know, like, if a scenario set up a certain way, what's going to happen, or at least what are some variables of this what's going to happen. And, like, just from us analyzing it, I could predict that in the near future, there is going to be a lot more dramatic natural disasters. I'll put natural disasters. And you remember the government's definition of natural is that man is natural. So therefore, anything man creates is also their natural. So if a disaster happens and it's caused by human beings, it is a natural disaster. If you don't believe me, you can ask the state of New Mexico. They're still asking for money and beating us over the head on the local news channels about how climate change has put us at risk for forest fires. And they keep bringing up that we had some of the worst forest fires ever, but they always fail to mention that the Forest Service started the fires. They always fail to mention that an arsonist lit a fire at a campsite, or little kids were playing with matches or something like that. They always fail to mention those, but they never forget to tell you that you are causing these disasters. And back to my logic, therefore, they are natural disasters because people are causing them. But they are not saying that, people are causing them directly, but indirectly through the climate. And it makes you wonder, millions of years ago, how did humans survive if, there were all of these massive amounts of jungles, animals, and carbon dioxide on the planet? How did we even get here?
We slashed and burned the forest to create our own niches for ourselves that gave us exactly what we needed for safety and security. That's what we did. If we go back 400 years, think about the amount of forest 400 years ago. But then you would need to 10x or 20x that for what Ransom was just talking about. Think about going 8,000 years into the past. We really have no records or barely any artifacts from that period of time when there were people. 8,000 years ago, not 80,000 or 800,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. In this present interglacial, right this second. Like, we can't even trace back from where we are now 8,000 years ago because it was so few people on the planet at that point. So right now there's 8 billion people approximately at last count, minus a few now, depending on how you do that math. So let's say 7.5 billion or 7 billion. At that point, 8,000 years ago, there were about 100 to 200 million people maximum. Some of the lower estimates put it at 100 million, which would be 70 times less people than now. Even if it was double that at 200 million, that's still 35 times less people than now, with the reduced population now, not even at 8 billion, but 7 billion. Just doing simple math. So you think how those people, our ancestors, eked their way out when there were 30 to 70 less times people than there are on the planet. Can you imagine if our planet's population was just half? Like the amount of resources and space that would open up? Okay, what if it was 3/4, 75% reduced? Oh no, we're gonna go 35 times less. That's what we cut and slashed and burned our way into. This 8 billion is exactly what happened. We took over that forest area and used it for our own habitation, but changed it slightly. So anytime you talk about, and this is a good one too, for those jumping back in history from Aotearoa up to, Polynesia and up into Hawaii, going across the equator there. Like going back to Aotearoa with New Zealand, their creation myth is something like this. The earth went through a terrible cataclysm and it stopped. And the great fisherman from the sky pulled down a, fishing pole with a line in the water and pulled the mountains of New Zealand out of the water and created the islands of what we know in mountains as we know as New Zealand today. They saw that plasma bolt come down in, and when something happened with the crust, it lifted and the ocean parted around the mountains. That's crazy because somebody saw that and knew that it happened. But then you look at Polynesia and you go back, man, we're talking 1,500 years ago, Roman era time, the Polynesians were up, like getting up through all the islands of what we know as Polynesia today. Like they had their own indigenous populations before the Polynesians arrived, some 1,500 years ago. to 1,300 years ago. You know, we're talking dark ages in Europe when, you know, Polynesians are cruising around all these Pacific islands. You know, it's pretty interesting how the whole civilization has moved and ebbed and flows based on the production of food and the availability for the world to feed itself. And it's pretty trippy how AI could possibly help us, you know, create more food, because at the same time it could destroy, or at the same time it could create so much abundance. I mean, I look at this thing and I say, we would, as a human species, would never have to work again at just the AI tech we see today and the availability to integrate it into everything that's done for our world. Like, some companies are taking advantage of that. Like you say, the lasers that shoot the weeds and whatever to clear a field for crops. Imagine if that was just given for free for the entire planet. Like, we would have, imagine what the human race could do at that point if they had no bills, no work time. All they had to do was follow their passion, whatever tripped them out, whatever you want, woodworking, electronics, you know, creating your own flies to go fly fishing. It doesn't matter. Enjoy it. You're into the gardening, you're into the earthworks building and the celestial navigation and the celestial monitoring. Cool, do that. Awesome, man. Go for it 1,000%, because you don't have anything to do. All your needs are taken care of. But the point of it is not to be lazy and just sit there and use drugs all day. The point of it is for the creation aspect. And I think that because of that, there would be no homelessness. There would be no poverty. And what we understand as mental illness now are the geniuses, perhaps, of the times that could lead others for the creation on something even greater for humanity. You know, you look at this thing and, like, we don't need to do any of these tasks. None of them right now. Literally, AI can cover every single task that's needed for a human to not only stay alive, but also just have an abundance beyond what, just incredible amounts of just lifestyle upgrades for everybody. 10x, 100x up. And that would just be because there's so much available that could be moved around and created and built, and all these tasks that we use for our time to do that could be done at an ultra high level for nothing. AI can, you know, and again, I come over into, yeah, it sounds like a utopia, like AI could do all these things. Well, it truly can build all these systems to get humanity off where we can sit around and just think and create. You know, you go back to some of these further cultures in the past, and that's what they did. That's why you don't find a lot of remnants and things of cultures further past that were at that point already. And so we're into degradation points, like each, you know, since the Roman Empire and even back through the Greeks and further back is Sumerians. And if you believe there was a Tartaria, you know, each step down seems to be successively like less advanced. Like, to be able to, AI can actually do everything we need. And, you know, where does that bring us as humans then? Will we start to rely on it because it can provide for everything that we need? That allows us that lifestyle to just sit and think and follow passion. And anytime that you need anything in your devotion to your passion and following it, it will actually turn up. Oh, I'm a woodworker. I need this, and this for tools. And boom, it's there because it can be. You know, those systems in themselves will generate their own revenue streams. And hell, this thing can produce its own electricity. Are you kidding me? This thing is so far off has gone, and I'm for, you know, just understanding the technology. If I could talk about Nikola Tesla and how this blends into it. You know, you look at some of these Nikola Tesla patents from using magnets to spin two disks in opposite directions, thereby create electricity by using the Earth's magnetic field. In the 1880s, that's when these patents were put out. So think about using AI and taking the original Nikola Tesla patents and then running them into the most modern technology that we know through, I'll be generous and say through the end of 2022. Good enough, close enough. But run that patent through all that and run it all the way to what the machine would look like today, and then to get the schematics of it and have the CNC lathe, everything, so you could get it. Every single part you need to build that machine right now. that's where this tech is at the moment. And I'm wondering why nobody's working with these Nikola Tesla patents and technologies. See, Ransom, that would be a good one too, is like, you can generate AI faces and have words and sell products and things. Or, I'm wondering if you took all the patents in the past that said, no, they didn't work, but have AI run them out until present. You know, that would be a skill and a niche right there. I'd be willing to hire somebody to work on that, to try to get it to move and actually get it to the point where those old patents through AI today can give us a working diagram with every single piece, part, size, thickness, material, spec, and the programs to cut it on any machine, whether it be welding, whether it be water blasting, CNC lathe, whatever it is. There's a pattern there, or what do you call that when you put on top when you want to cut cookies? That, so you can go down to your local shop, and if they had an acetylene torch, they could still cut you out something, and with their grinder, get it incredibly close to what you would need. You know, or all the way up to 3D printing everything. And everywhere in between with 3D printing metals and plastics and everything you need. See, that's where the AI needs to take us, is this direction, so we can expand humanity. I don't know, Ransom, maybe that's too much to think of. And again, you know, I try to think like how could this thing be used for greater good versus like locking us into where we are and then taking us that dark route, like you're talking, it's World War III, there's doing all the way down into the darkness, you know. I want to sit on the rising tide of energies.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like those aspects of these technologies ever get, like I was saying before, into the public domain to where they benefit humans. Like you brought up Tesla, which I thought was ironic. So I don't know. Should we turn off and talk about Hawaii here? Because I'm pretty sure, just judging by PolitiFact and what they're saying about it. See, I wasn't going to say what these conspiracy theories are on here, but they're right on it to tell you that they know what's up and you should only listen to them. So I thought maybe we should turn it off on the YouTubes, just so we could talk openly on Rumble and the other platforms there. So let me do that real quick.
Yeah, what's 37 plus 47? Anybody got easy math? So please, the 100+ people listening now, my math's bad. I can't think like that. Come on. All right, let me get my calculator out here. I'm very precise. I'm a Virgo. 67 plus 37.